why has the movement, and I think this will go beyond just our own movement, okay? I don't want to just focus on like just, it's not a Calvary issue, but why then today, like a movement that started 40, 50 years ago, why don't we have more black pastors in our movement?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we cannot expect for the big boys that I call the original guys. We can't expect for them to do it. You got to understand that Calvary Chapel started in Costa Mesa, in Orange County, an area that has less than 1% black, less than
Right.
1%. So those guys went out and started churches all around. And of course, the churches that they started is going to be white.
Right.
And the issue is that as they are going out pastoring churches, and they're going to be in suburbia USA, you got the inner city that's hurting, and sure they would throw some money at and try to do what they can to help, but then they go back to suburbia USA where they live and where their all white congregations are located. And here's the thing, because I talked about having a multicultural church, I talked about that around the country as well, is that there's a certain sound that is associated with every culture. There's a salsa merengue style with the Hispanic culture. There's a gospel R&B sound with the black culture. And so you have these sounds. And so you have Calvary Chapel, strum along on the guitar, do their thing. That's what they do in Southern Cal, they strum. And you go in the black church, there's nobody playing no guitar. It's an organ, keyboard, it's those types of things. Sure, somebody's on the guitar there in the background somewhere with a lead guitar or bass. That's
Mm-hmm.
about it. If you have that, but for the most part, it's choir driven. So what I did was, all I knew was when I came from Southern California to come to Virginia, all I knew was strum alum on the guitar, Maranatha music and all that kind of stuff. So I come to this area and people heard me on the radio. They said, I love the teaching, but that music is out of here. And they would go right out the door. Or
Mm.
some would hear and then they would begin to like the music, like the worship. So seeing that that is the case, there are sounds associated with every culture. And
Mm-hmm.
so Calvary Chapels are just that Southern California, strum along on the guitar. They took that, those original boys took that and went around the country and just perpetrated that. And then
Mm-hmm.
when blacks or other cultures come in, they're like, I can't get down with that. And so that's why here we are, for us to step out of the black church, which is more, demonstrative in their worship of God. Everything is loud and crazy and that sort of thing. And so, but that's just our culture. And so they come to Calvary Chapels and see all white people. The music is all white to them. The
Mm-hmm.
teaching is all white. And
Mm-hmm.
so they go out the door and say, let me go down the street. So, but when you got somebody that's like me or Bill that's been grabbed through the teaching, we're like, okay, we know this music is not what we used to, but we're starving for that teaching,
Mm-hmm.
that word. And so it began to grow on us. And I've told people so often that there's a huge difference to me between worship and praise. Worship is us pouring out our hearts to God for all that he's done for us. Praise is talking about what God has done for us. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of praise that goes on in the black church, and we sing about those things God has done for us, and that's rooted back in the slavery times and how God brought us through and all that kind of stuff. So there's a huge disconnect between the worship and praise in the
Mm-hmm.
black church and the white church, and therefore because of that, it will draw all whites to the worship. And then the praise, people are going down the road, black people are going down the road and say, I got to get my praise on because what's going on here at this church, nah, that ain't it. And so then there's this thing where they will love the teaching in the white church, but they want the praise in the black church. And so some would come to our church in the early days and say, we're coming here for the teaching, but we'll go down the street for the praise and for us to get our jump on and run around a little bit. And so that's where a vast disconnect begins to take place. I can go on, but I'm gonna let Bill.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So it's almost like our churches, and then I want to hear from you as well, Bill. Our churches are, this is in cross-culturalism, we call this assimilation. We're expecting people to assimilate to a particular style. It's not about the gospel message, but it's that, hey, this is our style. If you like that, join into our style. And we've been having to grow as a movement into, we can't make people fit our style. We might need to adjust our style. Bill, you have any additional thoughts to that?
Yeah, definitely. When I went to Calvary Downey, that was my first, when I walked in the door and it was worship, and it was like, man, I have to acquiesce to this. I don't like it. It felt like twangy country music.
Yeah.
But I went like Pastor Tony said, I was already at a place where I was hungry for the word. I felt called to preach. I wanted to get my family somewhere where we'd be under the word. So we went in saying, we're going to give up our flavor of music for sound teaching. But I never could get what I would bring people to church that they can come with me once. They was never coming back.
Yeah.
And so that was the norm. And so, but something I was going to say, because you had asked about, how come we don't see more, or why do you think there's so few? And this was when I was on staff at that church, and I saw with a lot of Calvaries, there was a huge emphasis on missions, which I thought was great, that they would send people around the world. And it seemed necessary. It seemed feasible, but then, I mean, I was begging to go 15 minutes down the 105, and there just wasn't as much of a heart to see that happen for a long time, for whatever reason, and so I was even frustrated at a church where, as a pastor, you did a mission trip every year. I'm going to Russia, Japan, Mexico, and I'm like, can I go to Inglewood? I want to go to Inglewood. There's a need right there, and eventually I was able to do that, but and I can't speak to why. I don't know why, but I do feel like that it's like something is missed. It's like it's something it's right, 10, 15 minutes away from, where a lot of these guys are at. And maybe there's a disconnect. Maybe there's just I'm unaware of it. I don't want to accuse anybody of just not having a heart for it, but it didn't seem as sexy as, getting on a plane and going out of the country, for whatever reason. So definitely, that's something it was a frustration of mine, even being part of the movement, where, I'm like, why can't we, why won't you guys invest in sending the guy over here, and, and then, like for me, I went out and I had, I was helped initially. And it's, it was very, 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 I would say it was the toughest thing I've ever done. 'Cause 6 months out, it was like, all right, man, you're on, and it was difficult, man. It was very, very difficult. I love some other church models for planting. I think the way we plant, it's just, my family never suffered as much as we suffered the first 3 years of doing this thing, and so I think that would make it difficult for some guys. For me, arguably, it'd been easier just to stay on staff at the white church, but I felt called to,